right, welcome to the next episode of the Rap Thought Podcast. You're here with Matt and Brandon, and today we're going to be taking a look at Pharoahe Monch's Desire.
How's it going, everyone? This album was cool. I'm not that familiar with Pharoahe Monch. Like, I remember hearing him on Oh No with Nate Dogg, one of my favorites. I've heard a couple albums here and there, but I've never given it an in-depth listen before. So this was kind of a cool thing to get into. What about you?
This is the first Pharoahe Monch album that I really dug into from front to back. Maybe because I was around when it came out. His first album came out in the 90s, and I was too young to even buy that album. So this is like the first one that came out where like it came out, I listened to it like front to back and really got into like analyzed an album from Pharoahe Monch.
How do you feel that Desire to the other music you were listening to in 2007, how do you feel like this kept up with it? Was it different? Did it stick out?
Yeah, this album definitely stood out. This is one of my favorite albums from that year. Obviously, alongside Blue in Exile's Below the Heavens. But yeah, I love this album when it came out. It really took me by surprise. I had listened to his first album, Internal Affairs, and I love that album, but this one I connected to a little bit more, maybe because I was listening to it in the moment when it was supposed to come out. It wasn't like I was listening to it 10 years later and then getting into it. It was in the moment.
Yeah, like I'm looking at other albums that came out that same year, and we're looking at American Gangster, which, you know, from Jay-Z, he had just retired, came back with American Gangster, and the album's Red, and I can see it. I can't remember the name of the title right now. But, you know, Kanye dropped Graduation, and I remember that at the same time was competing with 50 Cent's Before I Self-Destruct. Eardrum by Talib Kweli.
That was a good album too.
And then None Shall Pass, Aesop Rock, and as you mentioned, Below the Heavens, like Blue in Exile. So like a lot of big
07
albums.
was a good year for me.
It was a good year for me, everyone. It was a good year. It was a good music year.
Well, for me, that I was a senior. We were seniors in high school in 07. That was probably my height, or close to my height, of really digging into underground hip hop. So for me, 07 was awesome. Like, so many great albums came out that year, and it really helped me to dive deeper into hip hop. Because I love so many of those albums. And I think Q-Tip's The Renaissance came out the next year in 08, which also is one of my favorite albums from that period of time.
Oh, okay. One little correction I have to make: it was actually Curtis, not Before I Self-Destruct.
Okay. But before we get too far, I want to thank all of our listeners. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you for listening to us on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google. And please keep interacting with us on Twitter. You guys have been awesome. And Instagram.
Facebook's finally up, so definitely make your way towards there. Interact with us on that. And but yeah, thank you for the support and the likes and checking us out.
Another thing I want to stress, and I want to make sure we mention all the time, is that we're not a review-based podcast. We're not analyzing the album from the perspective of giving it a rating out of 1 out of 10 or something like that. We're really just digging into it and letting you guys know our thoughts on what we got out of the album and our perspective on it. And then hopefully that will get you guys to respond with your perspective.
Yeah, definitely. And I hope too that it inspires you guys to go out and check out the album and see what you guys think as well. Don't just for the perspective of music, don't just take it from us. Go and hear it yourself too, because maybe it's better than what we said. Maybe it's not as good as we said. But this is the whole point of the conversation: is, you know, we take a look at it, we give us your thoughts, you chime in, and it turns into a debate. It turns into something. So,
right. And I think what's cool is that the way the albums come up for us is pretty organic. Is we do throw a bunch of albums into a hat, but it's a good mix of albums that, you know, I love and you may have never heard before, or vice versa, where it's an album you love I've never heard before, or it's both where neither of us have heard the album before and it's our first time listening to it. I think that was Goody Mob, Soul Thought. soul food for
Yeah.
for us. I think it was episode 3.
Yeah, there's
Or episode 4.
When we were constructing the list, it was a mix of let's put on some of our faves, let's put on some female artists, let's put on some that we both haven't heard, but try to mix it up as much as possible. So it's, you know,
and we've already got a few comments of people suggesting albums for us to listen to. Like, oh, you need to listen to this one next and do this one on your next podcast.
We want that.
And we love that. At the same time, the way we choose albums is random right now. So that album may come up later. It
True.
just, it may come down, 10 weeks from now, but it'll come up eventually. So, but if we keep, I feel like if we keep getting the same comment, like, oh, you need to do this album, maybe we'll do like
take a look at that.
A listener's choice album. We do a podcast like that.
Yeah, that'd be cool. But yeah, it's totally random. So, but it's been fun. It's fun to do it that way too.
So yeah, let's get into the album. So you've never listened to this album before.
I have not. This is my first time hearing this album.
That's cool because I feel like this album is very different than most hip hop albums that came out this time and still coming out.
It's weird because I can't quite point out what I was listening to in 2007. I know in 2006, especially being in the Bay Area, that's when when Fizz and the hyphy movement was really big, especially up here in the North Bay. So like that was kind of where the direction of the music that I was listening to was. In listening to this album, I find it interesting the amount of political stuff that he brings in. And with that said, even those political things, so I won't go too into it now because it'll come up during one of the songs, but he talks about how, we spend a lot of effort in wars, but New Orleans needs our help right now. Even though that is years ago, that's a long time ago, we're still dealing with some of the same aspects of where Flint, Michigan still needs some water. However, we're putting our efforts and our energy in other places. He mentions how there were some people that were shot. And how big of a deal that was in the same song. And that still happens to today. So I just thought this album was really cool. It's not something I would have listened to as a 17-year-old, but it's cool now.
Yeah, there's a lot of depth to this album for sure that a 17-year-old may not be able to take in everything. And even for me, I listened to this album when it first came out, so I was in high school. I think going back to it now, there's a lot of stuff I missed.
Yeah.
Because I'm too young to really grasp everything that he's putting in this album, which I think is really cool. It's like I can still go back to it and find more.
And that's what makes records like these, in a sense, timeless too, because, if we listen to it at that age and we go back now, it's almost like a history book in a sense. Like, oh yeah, man, I forgot New Orleans had that.
He mentioned he mentions MySpace in one of the songs, and that was at the peak of, it was in one of the, I think it was in the club track that he did about the girl. He's like, I'm going to be in her MySpace top 8 the next day or something. And it's like, listening to it now, like, it sounds outdated because
it's super outdated.
But it's funny. It brings you back to that time.
Yeah. So it's cool like that. So, but I'm kind of curious. So for us, we were around in that time. So it's like a funny throwback. But how do you think an album, if you were to suggest this to a high schooler or whoever, someone younger, how do you think this would mix with them? Because there are some outdated things to them, but relative things to us.
Besides that, the production wouldn't gel with him. I don't think a kid today in high school would enjoy this production. It's too different from what's out today. There's so many like rock elements in a lot of these songs, and they're upbeat, they're high paced, a lot of energy. It's not there's no trap beats on here. You know what I mean? It's so different than what the current music is.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't think they would receive well just on that level. But yes, there are a lot of references in here that either are outdated, we don't see them anymore, or there's political references that you would have to look up.
Yeah, and I think that goes a little bit back to what I was saying before, tying this together. Even if it's outdated, it's still the same concept. So whether if you're talking about some girl, I'm going to be on our top 8 tomorrow, maybe she'll be, Facebook stalking you the next day in modern times. It's different, but it's still relevant. It's just different. But yeah, I mean, I thought this was cool. I saw it was his second solo album, came out June 26, 2007. Includes production by, I like seeing artists that do some of their own production. Like that makes me more inclined to like, oh man, he's like that's a lot of layers. I want to check that out. So by himself, Black Milk, Mr. Porter, and a couple other, I think he had The Alchemist on there a little bit.
Yeah, just looking at the production credits on paper, he had an incredible list of producers.
Yeah, it was
on this album.
It was pretty well spread out.
For 2007, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah. And I'm still like checking out Black Milk a little bit. So, as I hear past albums that he was on, I'm like, oh, okay.
That's one of the things I noticed too, because I'm a huge Black Milk fan. And I didn't realize when his first album came out, I didn't know about Black Milk yet. Looking at it now, it's like, wow, I had no idea Black Milk produced so many songs with this album.
Right.
I was really taken aback by that, and I really liked it.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, I actually dig this even more now.
Yeah, and Mr. Porter's one I'm starting to realize how big of a producer he is, just because like I'm familiar with him with D12.
Yeah.
Getting him and Swizzy, I forget the other guy's name, but they always get mixed up. And so like that's how I remember him. I was like, oh yeah, he's always the one that gets mixed up with the other dude. But and I know he's done a lot of work with Eminem and Shady Records and stuff. But
yeah, he's part of D12. So
yeah, so that was cool. But yeah, I mean the production is pretty cool on the album. I like the spread on that. But yeah, Desire.
Yeah, let's get into it. Well, before we get into it, like we have to mention Simon Says, like Pharoahe Monch's biggest record. I believe that was my introduction to Pharoahe Monch for the first time, is hearing Simon Says. It was such a big song.
It's funny, I remember that song, the first time I heard it was on Chappelle's show.
Okay.
When he does the Godzilla skit and he's just stomping around. I was like, oh yeah, that's that beat. Okay. Yeah. I know this song.
So I mentioned that because going from Simon Says and Internal Affairs, Desire is a much different direction, I feel like, for Pharoahe Monch. And his original group, what was it? Organized Confusion?
Yes.
I believe. Yeah. Which I still haven't got into, and I love Pharoahe Monch. I'm fucking up. I need to go back and listen to his albums.
I'm right there with you. I need to check it out too.
But what I mean to say is, going from Simon Says into Desire, it's such a different direction for Pharoahe Monch, I feel like, in terms of content and what he's speaking out against and what he's writing his songs about. Yeah. Which is really cool. It shows a lot of growth with Pharoahe.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a solid song. Like I said, Chappelle Show, I'm like, yeah. But I just need to go back and give it an in-depth look. The
Chappelle Show
15 years
was kind of... What other shows do that, where they break artists or they showcase artists?
You know what's cool is he was bringing in a lot of like artists that I personally still like listen to now.
Yeah, Talib, Mos Def, Pharoahe.
Kanye at the time. Kanye. He brought in De La Soul. I'm not too big on Freeway. But he brought in a lot of artists on that show, and that was super cool. Big Boy.
We need something like that today.
Yeah,
we need someone to bring that kind of vibe to their show.
That'd be pretty cool. Maybe if we blow up, we can get artists to perform on the show. That'd be dope.
So yeah, let's get into the track list. Intro.
This
powerful.
One, it was cool.
That's what I wrote down. It was a powerful intro.
It definitely set the stage. I saw that this one was Pharoahe produced 3 or 4, maybe 5 tracks on the album. This is the first one that he did. I thought this one was cool because it sets the stage of there's a lot of references, not only politically, but also in terms of being owned by the record labels and dealing with their political nonsense. And so I think if any lyric kind of encapsulates the entire song, it's I'll die before I become a slave.
The line is, and before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go to home to my God and be free.
Yeah, he's just I'm free. I'm not going to be.
Intro in the track, he's putting you in the listeners in the direction of he's going to be speaking about slavery, freedom, referencing his ancestors and how he won't go back to that. He refuses to be a slave in any form.
Yeah.
Whether it be from record labels or from slave owners.
Yeah, and he's talking about a different modern way of slavery in this sense. So as you're saying, he's talking about slavery, but it goes different than what you're anticipating. And you're like, okay, here we go again with slavery. For those that may be like that, but then it's not like that though, not quite. So but that's where we can slide into the second track of Free, where he's talking about that. I've heard of A&R. And it's not something that I was too familiar with, so I looked it up, and it's A&R stands for Artist and Repertoire, and they're basically the advocate for the artist, the liaison between the artist and the label.
Traditionally, an A&R is there to help develop the artist, to help them choose the right direction for their music, who to work with, kind of, like you said, open some doors for them in the industry.
Right. But he talks about, and you hear this in like an old slave thing on plantations and stuff, you hear the difference between house niggas and field niggas. And so with house, it's like we have privileges, we're with master, we have all this, we're good to go. The field people are still doing all the work. They're not regarded as high and everything. So he talks about how the artist, the label is the plantation, the artist is the slave, and how the plantation or the record label is basically pimping out MCs to go and do stuff, or if you don't own any of your music, you don't own any of your rights, we have it. You're going out, we're pimping you out, we're making money off of you. We don't care. Yeah, and with that, I really like throughout the album, I was, as we mentioned earlier, like I've never really given Pharaoh a really deep listen and stuff, but I like his very subtle wordsmith play that he does. And so I really liked how he talked about, using Wachovia, which is a bank, but saying how like the banks will watch over you. And then talking about there's not a mutual relationship with Washington Mutual being a bank. So the banks are kind of out to just collect.
That was such a cool play on words.
Yeah, I was
that's super creative. There's very few rappers that are gonna come up with stuff like that.
Yeah,
like he's at that elite level where he's gonna, and you're not gonna catch it the first time. It might take you a few times to listen to it.
Yeah, because when you're listening to it, it's with the Wachovia in particular. When you listen to the song, it's like, oh, that they're watching over us. Okay, we get that. But then you read the lyrics, and it's like, oh, that's not spelt right. Oh, wait, that's the bank. Okay. Oh, okay. I see what you did there. That was cool. Yeah. So I like that. I like his wordplay. He had me.
This song has a lot. This was a very high energy, powerful song to come after the intro to really bring you into the album. He starts off really strong and lots of energy, and the wordplay is insane. When he says, okay, yo, I give birth to verses in churches with no confession, so please pardon my postpartum depression. A-list MC to spit in C-sections.
Yeah. It's like, all right, man. Like,
that's incredible.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Man. But like, that wordplay doesn't stop. One of my favorite ones going into the next track, Desire. This is when I was reading the lyrics. He calls himself a monarch minus the A&R. So that without the A&R, that brings you back to Monch. A&R, he was just talking about.
Dude, I did not get that.
That's what I'm saying, man. Like, he calls himself a monarch minus the A&R. He was just ripping A&R in the last song. Yeah. So you're like, oh, okay. And the monarch
really connects the songs really well together.
That one was a great connection. And then, he's talking about how being as a monarch, which is head of state, king, and emperor. And also, this track kind of talks about, just respect for himself, knowing his worth. He says he's respected like Joe Namath, which I'm not too big on the New York Jets, but he was the only quarterback to win a Super Bowl for them. So that's why he was saying in New York that they have high respect for him. So it makes sense. But yeah, and then he's also talking about the whole slave thing again. Acknowledges that he's a slave. This one was cool because he's acknowledging that he's not necessarily saying that he's above anyone or any different than anyone's situation, but he acknowledges that his label owns him, but also saying that. So he acknowledges that he's a slave, but puts out that that he owns his masters. So when I was reading and when I was thinking about that, it was more just a touch on, yeah, they own me, but I know my worth. So I know that if I leave this label and if I go somewhere else, I'm going to be in high demand.
Or he's independent and he's putting out the music himself and owns his own masters to it and has full control. One of my other favorite lines that even when I first heard the song really stuck out to me, every time I listen to it, it just makes me drop my jaw, is my book is the ovary, the pages I lust to turn. My pen's the penis, when I write, the ink's the sperm. When he writes, like he's giving birth to words. Yeah. And he's giving life to verses and the music that he creates.
Yes. Yeah. He went in right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was cool. But, this being the album title, Desire, I always give these ones extra listens just because I like to see what direction or what statement that you're making with your album title. So if you if you call your movie something Alice in Wonderland, it's like, okay, well, I have seen the movie, but it's like, okay, I'm expecting some girl named Alice and I'm expecting some type of interaction with a place called Wonderland. Obviously that happens if you've seen the movie. So with the album called Desire, it's like, okay, this is different because it's music. You're speaking to your audience. You're on your pedestal. You're talking to the audience. What are you telling me about desire? What I got from that was the respect for his struggle in his lyrics. He wants you to respect his struggle, his hustle, his soul, and his desire, which I saw as everything that he's pouring into his music, his experience, the things that he went through,
his passion,
everything.
Yeah, he lays it out pretty straightforward.
Yeah,
of what his desire is, because it could be desire in terms of human desires for sex or drugs, or it could be any number of things.
Right.
His is to make music and to get his point of view across,
and also to deliver knowledge as well too. He references that quite a bit. So it's also to entertain, edutain,
and it's very uplifting. The chorus, it's telling you, he's saying, I keep pushing, I keep striving. And when you listen to it and you listen for yourself, you apply that to yourself, and it gives you energy to do the same.
Yeah.
Like you feed off of that energy that he's putting out.
And you mentioned push in?
Yes.
Yes, which is the next one we will be talking about.
Good connection.
Yes. So another cool part, this is another one that was produced by him. I liked this track. I thought it was really cool. And this is what we were talking about earlier with references back to George W. Bush and his administration. And one of the lyrics I really liked was, push in this era of G.W. Bush, we must load mental ammunition and bust. Thus, I will hold you down, I got you. One more repetition, I'ma spot you. And I thought that was cool because it's like, no matter what's going on, I'm going to keep feeding you this information. With knowledge is power, we just have to keep pushing through this track title. Right. So I really like that lyric.
Yeah, this is another song, high energy, really motivates you. For me, I'm listening to this in the morning to get motivated for the day. You put it on, gets your heart beat up a little bit, gets you moving.
Yeah. One of the notes that I put down was it felt motivational. Like I felt like, I was like, yeah, man, we're going to keep going through this. We got this. He's willing to be there, giving us what we need, and he's putting it out there for the average folks. It's not for top tier people. It's just for anyone that wants to learn. So I thought that was really, I really like that song. I like the track. And as he's talking about Bush's administration, track 5, Welcome to the Terror Dome, kind of made me think of that, because you have the place in New Orleans, the Superdome. And so, I don't know. Because in this track, he is talking about, how we're spending money on wars. New Orleans needs assistance. He also goes into a little bit of conspiracy things.
He does. He definitely goes a little bit left than where you think he's going to go. And he goes a little bit out there, which is fine because maybe that's what he believes.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, what degree of, the government, it's one thing, to say like the government is messing with us by taking, by restricting the availability of medications to the elderly. What do you think about his thoughts on the government triggering natural events, tsunamis, tornadoes, things in that regard? What do you think about that, of him saying that at that time?
I don't know if he necessarily believes it or believes it to be true. Maybe he believes that it's possible. I think he knows what he's doing in terms of putting it into his lyrics for the listeners to think about it and to question it.
I like that.
He's not necessarily saying you need to believe what I believe, but he's just going to put it out there and see, what do you put it out for the audience to dissect it and make a decision for themselves.
Yeah.
On if that's possible or not.
And, this is in modern times, because like right now, we're dealing with a shelter in place. We're both in the North Bay of California. We had to deal with fires. We dealt with floods early last year. So there's some times where you think how many times can we get shit on in a certain amount of months? And it gets to a point where maybe you could think, man, is this planned out? I mean, right now with the shelter in place, you have a lot of small businesses closed and they're suffering for it. People can't go to work. There's a whole ripple effect of that. And it's like, is this random? Is it in our best interest? Yeah. Or is it just what it is?
Yeah. I think it's good to have questions, but there's a line where you can go too far with it, and it's a deep, dark hole that you can get lost in if you go down that path of just being paranoid about everything that the government's doing, and they're trying to control this, or they're doing this to us to do whatever they're trying to do. I think that's just, it can be a bit much if you go too far deep into it. You can get lost in it, is what I'm saying. But I don't think Pharoah is lost in the conspiracies. I think he just puts them out there. And it's not like he does a whole song about the conspiracy. He just mentions it in a line.
Yeah, it didn't go deep, but I mean, like you mentioned, it makes the audience think about certain things. And so, as I'm thinking 2007, 2020, 13 years later, I'm like, man, like a lot of things kind of add up sometimes.
Yeah.
But,
one of the lines I really like, I mean, this could be partly conspiracy, I don't know, but he says the United States government is just a facade. The Catholic Church got ties with the mob. I see it all like the Wizard of Oz. Now there's a yellow brick road, the fame, riches, and cars. If you only had a brain, you would know who you are.
Well,
there's a lot of things going on in there. I love the reference to Wizard of Oz in those lines. Is the government just putting us on this yellow brick road to follow of get a job, make money, have a family, buy cars, buy material goods to keep the economy going?
Right.
Are we just all following the path that they set us on? Are we all just stuck on the yellow brick road?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it feels like it. I mean, but it's definitely, I don't want to use the word indoctrined, but I'll skate on that for a second. But I mean, you see that a lot with, in terms of generations. Our parents' generation, school was really big for them. So then they want to press that on us, like, you need to go to school. This is really good for you. But then in modern times, it's really not, it may not be as beneficial to go to school as it was for them back in their day. So I can definitely that's one of the things that came to mind when you were mentioning that.
Yeah.
I don't know. It is what it is. And what it is, track 6. Another Monch.
You're killing these transitions, man.
Love them.
I like it.
Another Monch and production. This was one of my favorite beats on the entire album.
I mean, yeah, super dope beat. The way he opens I mentioned to you before we started recording, the way he opens the verse with the Star Wars lines.
Oh yeah.
Like, I was just blown away. Because I don't think I caught that when I first listened to this album in '07.
Yeah.
I've been listening to this album since then, but not. I usually wouldn't listen to it front to back. I would pick out my favorite songs.
Yeah.
But I don't remember that line. And when I listened to it now, I was just like, holy shit.
Yeah, no, it's
Pharrell's
cool.
crazy.
So, I mean, for me, the B3 reference is an instrument you use for music, right? I believe.
A B3?
Is that what he says in the track?
He says, raps like Star Wars, only the stars die, it's no sequels. Beat 3 cases, see 3 POs.
B3. Oh, okay.
He beat 3 cases.
I didn't understand that reference. I looked at B3. I looked at B3 and it was something that she
And then he also references The Matrix. So before Morpheus and Neo was killing him, he was ducking bullets in the hood like Remo Williams.
Gotcha. I got the C3POs. Yeah. Someone else used that in one of their songs too. Can't remember who.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was pretty cool. Just to kind of go, I mean, I don't know how to describe that beat, but it's just like this very low key. I feel one of the words that comes to mind is kind of sinister, but just this dark alleyway sinister beat rapping along. It's like, okay, this is cool. So I like stuff like that. It's probably not the best description, but that's what it made me think of. But yeah, I mean, I like that what I got from the song is he's just laying low, but he's still getting his while people are kind of sleeping on him and sleeping in general. Yeah. One of my favorite lyrics in the song was, it's not American Idol. This is me trying to eat human survival. So basically not trying to keep up or compete with these. Well, no, he's not trying to compete with other rap artists. He's saying, I'm going to spit at your favorite rapper and take his title. But he's out here to eat. Like, he's here to get that paycheck and to survive.
Oh, yeah, he's not shy from backing down to having he came up in the rap battle era, the 80s and 90s. He's still going to have those lyrics where he's going to destroy other rappers with his verses. And I love that he keeps that going. Like, he's so creative. And his wordplay is insane. Yeah. I mean, there's not many rappers that can keep up with him.
Yeah. I mean, throughout the whole album, it's just it's super subtle. Very low key.
It's subtle, but at the same time, it also hits you hard. Yeah. Once you realize what he's saying.
Yeah, and I like that.
He does both at the same time. It's subtle, but when you catch it, you're like, holy shit. Yeah. How did he come up with that?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still on the Wachovia lyrics and whatnot. But yeah, it was one of my favorite tracks on the album. I really liked it. Yeah. When the Gun Draws.
Another powerful song.
This one was cool. Man, there's so many things to say about it.
It's similar to Nas's song, right? Right. Nas wrote a song from the point of view of the gun.
But yeah, what was cool was that he taught. I mean,
I Gave You Power. That's the name of the song.
Oh,
Nas song.
Gotcha.
It's from the point of view of the guns, and same concept. I think Pharoahe Monch is kind of playing off of that, but now he's going from the point of view of the bullet.
Right. And so from the beginning, he tells you that, hi, I'm Mr. Bullet. And he also. I didn't think it was cheesy. I thought it was funny because I like where it was going, but how he just the oatmeal reference. He made like 3 different references. You gotta think quick, man. Turn your brain to oatmeal. Just all this stuff. And I was like, man, he did it in a way that it wasn't cheesy. And I was very impressed by that.
Right. It's almost like if someone else said it, it would be cheesy.
Yeah. It would be, I mean, if Bizarre said something like that, he wouldn't pull it off and it sounds super stupid.
But Pharoahe can do it.
Pharoahe did it. But yeah, he talks about coming from the perspective of the bullet and just talks about how the whole song's interesting because he's basically saying our gun's the ones to blame when it comes to death. That's what I got from this. So in one lyric, he says, when I hit kids, why am I one to blame? And then he credits the white man for creating guns and distributing them into these situations.
Right.
And, also saying, as opposed to all that, the one thing that the bullet does not do is it doesn't discriminate against anybody. Anyone can get it. Right. But
And then he goes back into some conspiracies in this track with the Harvey Oswald.
Oh, yeah.
And, the Kennedy assassination, the Lincoln assassination. He's throwing it out there. Those could be government conspiracies where the government actually murdered those presidents.
Yeah.
To set up the next president or to end something that they didn't agree with.
Yeah, I mean that's the power that the gun has, and another thing that the power that it also shares is he mentions in one of the last lines of the first verse, and basically saying, if I don't kill you, you'll remember me when it rains. So when it rains, like when shit hits the fan, or just when you hear gunshots, it's like, oh man, I got shot that one time. I definitely don't want that to happen again. So just that power of causing PTSD or anything like that. Which
thinking about this song now, this song, I'm feeling that Pharaoh took the idea from the song and applied it to his next two albums that came after this, with War and PTSD. He really took those concepts and applied it to an album as opposed to just a song. Mm-hmm. Like he really went in depth on those two albums with concepts.
PTSD, I felt like it got very personal here and there. And this one I put down to is like a solid question that he asked. If bullets were to become as expensive as the firearm, will we turn to arson or fire bombs to get at people? What do you think? Yeah.
It doesn't have to be guns. People will find a way to hurt other people.
Yeah.
They'll find the means to do it. That's how guns were created in the first place. You wanted to find another way to hurt people.
Yeah. So, I mean, it kind of all around, asking, are guns really to blame for killing people with that? Like, because if they were to become, whether if we took them all away, whether if we priced them out, are we just going to find something else that's just as devastating? You have to get to the root of why are people using the guns to do that?
The problem is, especially in this country, it's so political with guns. It's a very political thing. It's not a moral or a human thing.
Right. But yeah, and I agree. But that was like the takeaway that I got from this song with that. Of that's kind of the questions I feel like he wants to people to consider, to think about. But I thought it was interesting. So let's go. Black Milk production.
Another dope Black Milk track.
Yeah. This is finally getting a lot of these tracks. They have a lot of content in them. This one was the first one for me where he's just going in, having fun, going into.
I wrote down that he was flexing. He was flexing his rhyming ability.
Yeah, he's just going in. But there were, I don't know if you did you catch all those cell phone references that he was making towards the end? Man. I glisten man, stuff stitch man. You use sex to sell, your next tell to sprint. Everything you represent is immoral, singular, not plural. Singular as in the cell phone.
Damn, no, I did not catch that.
You and your sidekick get rid of that whack trio. I freeze MCs 0 degrees below. The blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice.
The blackberry.
Yeah.
Damn, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, he just went off in 2 bars of just cell phone stuff, and I thought that was really that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I did not catch that since I started listening to it. That's really cool.
Yeah, it was just funny it's. I feel going back to that question I asked you at the beginning of if we pass this to someone in the younger generation, that's something that would go completely over their head. They wouldn't get that.
Yeah.
But it's fun for having grown up in that time.
Yeah, today it's the only reference they would understand with cell phones is Android and iPhone. They're not going to understand any other reference.
Right. Yeah, that's basically what we got left. But, the next 2 tracks, they kind of, I would say between Let's Go, Body Baby, and Bar Tap, they kind of go in a different direction than the previous 7 tracks we were listening to because they had content. These ones are kind of I'm going after MCs. I'm going after women in bars. I'm going, I'm having fun with this, talking intimacy and stuff like that.
Yeah, he still does it in a really creative way.
Yeah,
with lots of lyricism.
Right, and that's I put down. It was just a fun song. It was just fun to hear.
Yeah,
I might have to start using. I'm trying to get horizontal. It's just like, okay.
Pharaoh is funny. Like he has a lot of comedic lines.
Right.
He can be really funny. He can be really intense. He can have his conspiracy theories, but he can also be really funny.
Yeah, he has a sense of humor, and I think that's cool to bring into your music. Because when with either books or movies or anything like that, it's good to have a good distribution of the themes that you have. Because if you're overly political, you may lose the interest of people, because especially in our country, not too many people really dive into politics. They don't really, sadly, even know the extent of what's going on today in a lot of things. So if you just pump out a bunch of stuff, it may go over their head.
Right.
But then again, if you're just putting out too much party stuff, it won't really age that well. It's like, okay, cool. Like, I remember the hyphen movement. I had a lot of fun then. I'm not listening to a lot of that stuff from then. From time to time, but not as much as I would with other music. That keeps me thinking and things like that. Keeps me engaged. So, but I like that with these kind of 3-4 tracks. It's giving us something different.
Yeah, it changes the vibe a little bit. It's kind of like a break from the conspiracies and the heavy topics we just talked about. Gun violence and bullets killing people. Now we're transitioning into love and lust and desires for women.
Yes.
One of my favorite songs in one of my favorite lines in Bar Tap is, I got you Hennessy and Coke, but should have got a diet, because if you watching your calories, now where's my hospitality? And if I got it straight, shit, what if it's straight? Because after a couple of those, you start to relate. I just thought that was a really funny line.
Yeah.
Like, I'm getting you a Henny and Coke, but I'm going to make sure it diet, because you're probably trying to watch your calories.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. But yeah, it was a Bar Tap it was fun. I had a lot of fun with that track and just things that were going there. I like the reference in the second verse where, there's one part where he's talking about a roll of quarters, because she's dancing up on him and everything, and he's like, no, that's not a roll of quarters. So, but he also says, I said that's not a 9 mod, that's merely an 8, but if I could buy you a drink, we could go on a date, because you sound like you wasn't born inside the Empire State. And then it goes into her Popular, Secure, which is kind of a throwback to, when Nelly and Chingy were hot, and bringing in that St. Louis influence and stuff. So I thought that was cool.
So good.
I think I know where she's from then. So, but things like that were cool. I like those tracks. But then, after those 3, we kind of get back into not like deep political stuff, but just some other things. So Hold On I put this down, it was a really deep track. And it brings in Erykah Badu, grew up listening to that from my mom. She's one of my favorites. But this...
really strong song.
It was really super strong. Messages. Yeah, I mean, it was just a cool story. It talks about a little girl named Diamond and how she's being made fun of basically for being black. Like, you're inferior to me, your hair's greasy, your skin's dark, whatever else, all this and that. The chorus talks about holding on, being strong. There's a lot to live for, because, especially I work with special needs kids, but regardless if you're special needs, if you're neurotypical, one of the things that always pops up, mainly for high functioning kids, is a lot of kids in general, they remember being bullied back in the day. And this carries on, I'll speak to being 31, but the people that I know around my age, this carries on a very, very, very long time. There's a lot of things that stick to.
You still hear all the time where people, they have certain characteristic traits or they behave in certain ways because of what happened to them when they were younger.
Right.
And they never dealt with it, or they didn't understand it, so they just became a person that didn't quite deal with those issues.
Right.
Being bullied.
Yeah, it just stuck with them. One of my guilty pleasures is My 600 Pound Life. But but with that said, there's a lot of reasons why these people got up to 670 pounds, 800 pounds, whether they were sexually abused, whether their parents were giving them enough attention. There's a lot of trauma back in the day that they didn't deal with. So they turned to food in order to, I need to get, whether you turn to food, whether you turn to alcohol, to drugs, you turn to something else because you haven't dealt with that past trauma. Right. And so with that said, that when that chorus hit with "Be Strong, There's a Lot to Live For," that made me think of people that have been bullied, people that are 600 pounds. It's like you don't have the resources at the time to really filter through all these issues. So you turn to these things and it's like, dude, just, sometimes there's a 17-year-old I work with, an 11-year-old where you're just like, dude, things suck right now. I know school is not fun, but you just have to like hammer out these last 6 years, this last year of school, and then you're free of all these people. And you'll see that you guys are out of your cliques and you're back down to ground zero. Everyone's equal once you're out of high school, when you're out of those cliques. But I also, so that was the first verse of her being made fun of and this and that. It also, I like songs that instruct me, that provide me with an education. So there were things that I had to look up as well. So I wasn't familiar with the William Lynch letter. I don't know if you've heard of that much either. But it's basically a letter. This letter by William Lynch basically states that if you want to be successful at owning slaves and running a successful plantation, you basically need to set up slaves against each other. So we can talk about conflict theory, the haves and the have-nots. That's Karl Marx. But basically what he's saying, and I've read this in other books too, where you set up differences between people, whether if you say, hey, we've seen this with the civil rights movement. My skin's white, your skin's black. You're inferior to me. Go drink at that fountain. That already creates this system of like, I'm better than you, have and have not. In the letter, it talks about you can separate people by complexion. So in the black community, there's oftentimes like light-skinned people and dark-skinned people, and there's a little bit of things going on there. But then also age, hey, this person's younger, they could do more work. This person's older, they're not as valuable or anything like that. But he kind of Pharaoh does a good job of translating that to modern day where we still have those issues. But yeah, just like a lot of layers in that song. Towards the end, and this is the other cool part where I liked that her name was Diamond because it stirred with me until the end. But in the last verse, you get the sense of the time has passed. She's grown into this strong person. And so it's not that the term diamond is brought up a lot, but it's not until you think about it, you're like, wait, like diamonds are formed with pressure. That makes a lot of sense. She was made fun of as a kid. She's a strong person now. She endured all this stuff, and now she's a strong person. So I kind of liked that message because there were a lot of things that weren't pressed. But
because of the pressure she went through, he says, like a cell protecting itself from a virus, she was able to form that cell around her to protect her from people being racist towards her or to putting her down or trying to make her feel less than. Yeah. She's able to protect herself from that. Yeah. Because of what she went through when she was younger.
Yeah, that, and like he mentions the system is designed to not work necessarily in our favor. So like you just have to stay patient and do the best that you can, and you'll make it out of this. So I thought that was a really deep track. I really liked it. What Erykah Badu say, if we are made in his image, then call us by our names. So if we're made in the image of God, then we should all be equal. So get off me. So going to the next track, maybe it could have, in terms of like, I'm not going to say this didn't fit with the album. Track listing, but maybe it could have gone prior
to this. Yeah, it's an interesting arrangement of the tracks. I have to say, So Good is probably my most played song from this album.
Really?
Yeah, surprisingly. It's more of like an R&B song. I don't know, I just always love this song. I love the beat. I love, his rhyme schemes and what he does in it. For me, I mean, I don't know if you've ever done this, like made a playlist or burned a CD, if you're older, for you know, when you're with a chick and you're
What are you doing with this chick, Matthew? Are
you're playing this song and you're seeing what happens. No, but this is one of those songs that I throw in at that time.
Whoa.
Because it, like, how could you not? Like, I think it's a perfect song for that for that scenario.
That's cool. That's dope. Yeah,
it's a very sensual song.
It is
very sensual, like to the T.
Yeah, it gets the blood flowing. Like, but I did put down, like, I thought throughout the album, and I was reading in one of his interviews how sometimes it sounds like he's laying his verses down on the spot in a sense. I forget the exact words he uses, but I feel that in all the other tracks on this album. In this one, I thought the cadence that he delivers was perfect on this. It was the best on this song as opposed to any of the other songs on the track. I thought it was the best one on this one. But yeah, it's sexy time. But also like he
sings on it too. Like he's a decent singer.
Yeah,
as you know from the Slaughterhouse song, he sings on the hook.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah. What's that song called again? Fuck.
I don't remember.
I love that song too.
But I also get the feel that he's like holding space. It's not just like, hey, I'm gonna bang you out and you're gone. It's like
it's connecting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not just trying to hook up with you at the bar, take you home. This is give your stress to me. I'm gonna take that from you and help you feel good. And he's more focusing on her.
Yeah.
And which he's not just looking at her as an object and what he can get out of her. He's looking at her and he's like, all right, I'm going to focus on you and help you feel good.
Yeah. 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 Cool. Man, I respect the sensitivity, Matthew.
Hey, man, you gotta have the traction. You gotta have those.
I'm not putting.
You gotta have those burn CDs for the ladies.
I'm not putting this track on for that. Yeah.
What are you putting on there?
I'm not putting on anything.
Oh, come on! You gotta have some fun.
No, not. I don't know. Not.
You know, this song and Most Def the Panties is what I'm putting on.
Really?
Every time. Yeah. That's another classic for that time.
That song's long.
Yeah, perfect.
But like we were saying, man, like with the kind of going back, you know, because the first, as we were saying, like tracks 10 through, 8 were like meeting these girls and doing whatever. But then you go to Hold On, which goes deep, but then to come back to So Good, but then to jump into Trilogy, which is pretty wild. So
what I'm thinking is he wanted to break in between like the concept heavy tracks. Like, he wanted to break it up and not have them next to each other because that'd be a lot to take in for a listener.
Yeah,
that's what I'm guessing.
And it's good too. Like I don't think it should always be this. An album doesn't always have to be this cohesive. Storytelling thing.
Yeah, sometimes it's just about creating a body of work that the listener can listen to in one sitting,
right? Without
getting too much thrown at them at once.
Yeah. So one of the things to kind of go off subject for a second, one of the things I really like about us doing this podcast is that we don't discuss it beforehand. This is us actually talking about it firsthand.
Right.
So with that said, to set that premise, Trilogy threw me off a little bit. Okay. I didn't understand the third verse. You may have to help me clean that up a little bit. So the first verse starts off with a wedding. So this wedding happens, and then it's to be assumed that the person in that wedding, because I don't think there's a music video for this song.
No.
It's to be assumed that the person that was in that wedding, years later, whenever later, he comes home, his wife is shot, there's a man naked in the front yard, police are on him, he's confused as to what happened, he gets a phone call, wow, that just hit me, he gets contacted that he left his phone at the studio, so he needs to go back for it, but he's in confusion of what happened. So to give some context to this track has 3 acts to it. And it's really cool because each act, it transitions to a different beat and it transitions to a different part of the story. So the story opens up with the death of his wife. The second act is a kidnapping. So dude wakes up, he's tied to the bedpost. There's, the guy's just like, dude, I caught you, you've been sleeping with my wife. I caught you. You were my, and the twist is like, you were my best friend. Like, we've been tight. He makes a reference to Run DMC in an album that we actually have slated to review somewhere down the line. He's like, we were tighter than that, and this is what you did. So that was Act 2. Act 3 is where I got confused a little bit.
Yeah, I don't have a hard answer for what Act 3 really means. I mean, we can go through it. It starts off with he's buried alive in a grave, which
I kind of took as a metaphor in some regards, but it's basically like, you know, he talks about till death do us part, and how coincidental.
I think it's a set, like, he got set up. I think the girl, like, his friend set him up, or the girl set him up, because he says, no friend of mine, she's sleeping with, committed the crime. In the past 3 years, switch identities 6 times.
So was that...
while I'm devoted to love and loyalty. So I'm feeling like she was like a con artist or something, trying to get his royalties. They plotted on my publishing checks and royalties.
So that, with that said, was the wife with the other guy?
The guy, but I think the guy turned on her as well.
So I was wondering if she was just using Pharaoh for his money and maintaining a relationship that she already had previously, or with that guy. So like, that's what they had. And then it's like, hey, I'm going to go marry Pharaoh because he has stable income. All I have to do is sleep with him from time to time, go visit him, and work will be solid. So that's where, and to be honest, like, I feel like I understood the third verse. Yeah. I didn't understand it in relation.
It feels like they all die, though, at the end.
Yeah.
He kills them, and then he kills himself or something like that.
But I didn't understand it in relation to the first 2 acts, because in the first act, dude comes home, wife is dead. But then in the third verse, he is seeking revenge on her and got her. But then let's say that dude is who it is, the best friend. He got caught in the second act. So he should be gone too. But I'm wondering too if in the third verse he had mentioned that no friend, like that line that you just referenced, no friend of mine, did he get the wrong person? And then now he's coming after the person who he thinks it actually is?
I don't know.
So that's where we may have to just leave our thoughts of that. But that's where I got kind of
maybe
mixed
someone
up.
else can help us with this.
Hey,
if you really get the song trilogy and you understand it,
comment, please.
Yeah,
clean it up. Clean it up for us, please. Because it's a good song, and I really like the production.
It's almost like a Tarantino movie where maybe things are happening out of order.
Yeah.
And you have to piece it together.
Yeah. But I just personally just missed something that it didn't make sense to me. So, yes, please comment, say something, help us clean it up. But yeah, it was cool. Lastly, Book of Judges, I thought was to end it. It got political here. I liked the track. I thought it was cool. But it just basically talks about how, you know, and I'll just reference African Americans, but just how American history has fucked over all people of color over the years. And, you know, this is another throwback because he references Rock the Vote, which is a really big campaign back at that time to get the younger crowd to go out and vote. And so I was like, oh, man, I remember that. That's cool. But, you know, he's talking about, like, if we've been boned for years, why am I going to go vote when nothing really changes? And I can already think of my cousin and, like, things that he would say about, you know, he would highly agree with all that. But, you know, he also talks about how we continue to suffer while the rich still are going out and getting money. And this is the lyric I was trying to think of that I thought was in the first song, but it wasn't. But he says, I'd rather die on my feet than to live on my knees. And he mentions that in the chorus.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, he also...
I think he mentioned that in the first song as well.
Yeah.
I think there's a line in there about that.
There was a line. I don't think it was the exact one, but it was similar to where I got confused by it. But, you know, and I like how he made a reference to him as Moses because he's a prophet and, you know, putting knowledge out there. But I thought it was really cool. But the Book of Judges, what I got from the title of that song was he makes a reference to the Magna Carta. And so the Magna Carta wasn't something that I personally was familiar with. So I had to look that up. And, we know the Magna Carta, Holy Grail by Jay-Z, but the Magna Carta means the Great Charter. And it's this really important historical document that basically lays the foundation for certain rules. So it states that everyone, including kings and emperors, are subject to law and guarantees the rights of individuals, the right of justice, and the right to fair trial. So basically due process. And this is years and years ago. But what's cool, or maybe what's cool, but it's the fundamental guidelines from that have been used across a lot of different countries as constitutions.
Right.
So it actually comprises of about 1/3 of our Bill of Rights. So, but in the end of the song, he's saying, fuck the Constitution, fuck the Magna Carta, and he just goes over that over and over and over. So my question for you is, do you think he's saying, based off the beginning of the song of like, we've, as people of color, we've been boned for years, but then there's these documents, these judges that have been out here, but then do you feel like it's a fuck these documents because they turn their eye and they don't matter when it has to matter, when people are actually when people are in trouble, when they are in danger? It's like, what are these documents for if we don't push them?
Yeah.
What do you think of him? Why do you think he's saying fuck Magna Carta, fuck the Bill of Rights? Fuck the
I think he's saying that what good has it brought up to now? Like, what has it been used for? Has it been used for good? Has it, saved our people, or has it brought us together? Has it changed any of our lives for the better? So I think he's challenging it. He's challenging that way of thinking of, we need to follow the Constitution. We need to follow the Magna Carta to heart. Maybe there's a better way to do it. Maybe there's a better way to have society follow a certain set of guidelines. That's kind of what I got from it. I mean, he goes pretty hard on it.
Very.
Yeah. He goes pretty deep. One of the lines he says, the barcode around your neck, the same as your name brand. You're lost in a strange land, no thoughts of a game plan.
I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. Referencing, our value is in purchasing goods and being part of a system.
Right.
All we have is a barcode. It could be a reference to the movie 1984. People actually have barcodes on them and they're just a number.
Yeah.
That's all the government looks at you as a number to pay them taxes or whatever.
I'm sure it references that.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a really interesting concept that he went into. I mean, it's a heavy way to end the album. There's a lot of stuff going on in there.
That's literally the last thing you hear in that album.
Yes.
Is fuck these documents that people have been using for years.
Right.
And are the basis for having a civilized place.
I think he's just challenging it. He wants people to ask questions and look at them from a different perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how you can, kind of put out a way of, I don't know. I feel like he does a good job of not coming off as aggressive or like, no, this is fact, but then just coming out as like, this is just a challenge. What do you think?
Yeah,
like I don't feel like he was pushing anything on.
Pharaoh and Royce both do that really well of not being preachy.
Yeah,
like they're laying some heavy stuff onto you, some conspiracies, but they don't do it in a way where they're talking down to you. And they don't make you feel inferior for not knowing these things. It's more like educating.
Maybe it's because they brought you on board, like they're right there next to you. Like, hey, I'm on your side. These are just some of the things that I'm bringing to the table that I feel like are worth fighting for as well too. So that's why it's like you're fighting with someone, or you're arguing. You have a team and you're arguing, then they bring up some facts that they spit at the other person. You're like, oh, I didn't really think about that, but I guess that's a good point. Like, I'm glad that you're bringing that up, and it's something that I missed. So it's just kind of an interesting perspective. So I really liked the album, and I think it's cool for it coming out in 2007. I wish I could almost take a step back to, I'm sure I could find burned CDs and mixes that I've made and be like, all right, what was I listening to in 2007?
Right.
And then compare this to that. And just, it'd be interesting to compare the content and be like, whoa, like, it's interesting this was out.
Yeah. After this album came out, Pharoah became one of my favorite rappers. Maybe not. I mean, he became not my most listened to rappers, but he was definitely in the top, probably close to top 5 rappers that I respected for their pen game and their writing and their rhyming ability. For me, if I'm going to pick 5 rappers to just rap their asses off and throw so many lines at you that you're not going to catch right away or they're going to blow your mind, Pharoah is in there. He's in there with Black Thought. He's in there with Royce. He's in there with Elzai. He's in there with Eminem. Like, he's a top tier lyricist, and I don't think he gets enough credit for that.
No.
For his rhyming ability and how good he is. I think an issue with that is the last 2 albums he's put out, War and PTSD, are so concept heavy, and there's like the music is great, but the concept of it's hard to digest for the normal consumer. You know, that it's a lot of heavy stuff. I mean, even Desire is a lot of heavy topics in here.
Yeah.
It's not easily digestible.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't feel like it's easily digestible, but maybe this contradicts and doesn't make sense, but I don't feel like it's anything hard to digest because it's a lot of stuff. He's not talking about anything in here that we haven't heard of.
Right.
At the time,
not digestible in the sense of understanding what he's saying. Digestible in the sense of, do people even want to hear that in music? Right. That kind of stuff. You know, they maybe want just some cool lyrics and to make it more fun and lighthearted and not be so serious or so intense with the topics that he's talking about. That's what I mean by digestible. Yeah. Anyone can sit down and most people will understand a lot of what he's saying. Yeah. But it's like, do they want that?
Is that what they want to hear?
Right. Because if it's not something they want to hear, they'll just shut it off, you know, after 3 or 4 songs. Like, they're not going to go through the whole album and really take it in.
No, and I think that's a solid point. I mean, that goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like, you have to dance that line of, you know, you can talk about social things that are relevant so that you want to age well and you want to be heard. Because then if you're just talking about all these dance themes, all this stuff that, you know, doesn't really make sense, whether if you want to mumble it all out, it's like, are people going to listen to you 15 years later as an artist?
Where do you put Pharoah for you? Like, in terms of artists that, you know, where do you place them in the top rappers argument? Or
man, you're gonna put me on the spot like that.
Well, have you listened to all of his projects? Like, have you listened to Internal Affairs?
I haven't. I've only heard PTSD in this one. Okay, there's only 2. But I
his
mean,
first album is a lot of people would say it's a classic. Internal Affairs. I mean, it's a great album. So many good songs on it. It's aggressive and it's got some heavy stuff on there. The lyrics are great. It's a little bit less focused, I think, than Desire and War and PTSD.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of hard to place him in that. And you know, the other thing about this podcast is checking out people that, you know, I've heard a song or 2 by them, but now I'm listening to their whole album. So with that said, you know, my list is going to be changing and ever growing, you know, even with groups. I mean, even if, you know, in doing Goody Mob, they may not be a top group that I'm listening to, but that album was pretty solid though. Like, that might be something that, it's a great album. So, you know, Pharohe Monch, like, I mean, he's from New York. In terms of like, is he in my top 10 people coming out of New York? I think I could safely say that at this time.
Yeah, you could argue that. You can make it just in terms of rhyming ability, maybe not in terms of discography or hits or sales or, you know, any of those arguments that you can throw in there.
So I guess when I think of like a top anything, I'm thinking of like how engaged am I? What are you talking about? You know, a little bit of production, but mostly like the content that you're preaching out to me. You're on the soapbox. Why am I coming out to you and listening to you? Am I learning anything from you? So with with those in mind, and there's other things that I can't think of off the top right now, but with those in mind, and just off this album, I could say like, you know, top 10 or 15. If I gave it more time to think about it, like I would have a more definitive number. Yeah. But I would say he's up there. He's cool.
Yeah, and I'm excited for his next project. He's been kind of hinting at it for a while. I'm pretty sure it's almost done. And he's saying it's got a lot more rock elements in it. So that's going to be interesting to me.
PTSD had a lot of rock
I think he goes even farther into it on this next project. And I think it is another... I think he may have said it's a less concept-driven album.
that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like with some, I mean, I think of I'm Not a Human Being, and then I think of some Eminem projects where, and also some Tech Nine where they went pretty rock heavy.
Right.
That personally, you lose me a little bit.
Yeah.
But
you got to do it in the right way.
Yeah, you got to do it the right way.
Do it. It's been done.
Yeah, it can be done, and it has been done. But too much of it can be like, all right. Like
if it's cheesy or over the top, or you gotta have a balance with it.
Yeah.
But what it's interesting, not related to Pharaoh, but with the rock thing, there's kind of rumors that Kendrick's next album is going to be a little bit more rock influenced. Which I don't know to be true or not, but it's interesting.
Yeah, I'm ready for that to drop. I'm ready for him to come back out.
We need some K-Dot.
I'm ready for some Kendrick. So,
but yeah, that's our rap thoughts on Pharoahe Monch's Desire. Definitely, if you listen to this podcast and you are interested in all the topics that we discussed from this album, definitely give it a listen. You're going to be able to pull off from it, and we did not get to everything that's in this album. No. There's a lot more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's always more, but can only cover so much. So.
All right. So, yeah, thank you for joining us. Make sure to follow us on Spotify, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Definitely give us a follow on all those platforms, and we look forward to speaking with you guys.
Definitely.